It was just after 6:30 p.m. when Jacqueline Monroe veered off Highway 378 onto the quieter, winding stretch of Route 58, the kind of back road where the evening settles in slow and steady. The sun hung low on the horizon, painting the cotton fields in a syrupy amber light, its final warmth bleeding over everything like a memory. Jacqueline, 62 years old and steady as the rhythm of a hymn, wore her usual patterned blouse, silver hoop earrings, and beneath her collar, hidden from plain sight, the dog tags of her late husband, a man whose memory still walked quietly beside her. She was driving her well-worn 2004 Honda Accord. The fabric of the steering wheel had long since faded, and the back seat was cluttered with church flyers and grocery bags. That afternoon had been one of the good ones. She'd driven to Florence to visit her sister Corinne, helped her plant tomatoes in raised beds behind the house, laughed until their sides ached about old flames and summer mishaps, then packed her sister up with homemade cornbread and a few jars of preserves. It was the kind of day that left you full without needing a thing more. But peace can be a fragile thing. Jacqueline noticed the patrol car just after she made the second curve. At first, she gave it no thought. Anyone could end up behind you, for a while on a quiet road. But when the cruiser matched her every turn, hugging the distance a little too tightly, her grip on the wheel firmed. There were no flashing lights, no siren, just a shadow, quietly keeping pace. She glanced in the mirror. The officer behind the wheel wore mirrored sunglasses, though the sun was nearly gone, his face unreadable, his body unmoving. She blinked. A breath, then another. Jacqueline signaled and eased off the road, pulling onto the shoulder with the patience of someone who had done nothing wrong. As the cruiser lit up behind her, she shut the engine down and placed both hands on the steering wheel, still and composed. Officer didn't approach right away. He sat in his car, radioing something in, his silhouette hunched forward like he expected trouble. When he finally stepped out, it was with a slow, calculated pace, boots crunching over gravel like he wanted. Each step to be heard. He didn't greet her, didn't offer any explanation. Just barked. License and registration. Jacqueline nodded calmly. My license is in my wallet. Registration's in the glove compartment. I'm reaching for it now. Her movements were deliberate, measured, nothing sudden. The officer said nothing, only watched. When she handed him her documents, he glanced at them for no more than a second. You from around here? He asked, still holding the IDs. I live in Darlington County, she replied. What brings you out this way tonight? I was visiting my sister in Florence, heading home. You take this road often? Sir, she said gently. Can I ask why I was pulled over? He didn't like that. His gaze tightened. You crossed the center line. She didn't. Flinch. I didn't feel my tires cross, but if you say I did. He let the silence stretch, hanging between them like bait. When she didn't rise to it, he said, I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle. Her jaw tightened. May I ask why? Out of the car, ma'am. Her voice stayed calm. Am I under arrest? Don't play games. Out. Now. Jacqueline glanced again in the mirror. Nothing but open road and fields. No cars, no homes nearby. Just sky and dirt. Still, she obeyed. Unbuckled. Opened the door. Stepped out. The officer circled her vehicle slowly, peering into windows, inspecting the car like he was trying to will it into guilt. Where'd you say you were going again? Home. Darlington. How long were you at your sister's? Since lunch. You own this car. It's registered to me. He paused, then gave a crooked smile. Mind if I take a look inside? I do mind, Jacqueline said. Excuse me? I don't consent to a search. That changed his posture. His shoulders lifted. His voice lowered. I can get a K9 unit down here. You can, she said, arms now crossed over her chest. But not without cause. He stared at her, jaw tight, clearly unaccustomed to being told no. And yet, Jacqueline didn't back down. She didn't blink. She'd lived long enough to recognize the undercurrent in a situation. This wasn't about her driving. "You got something in that trunk you don't want me to see?" he asked, voice cooler now, baiting. "No, sir." "Then why not let me look?" "You still haven't told me what I did wrong." "I told you. The center line. That doesn't give you the right to search my car." The officer moved toward the rear of the vehicle, eyes grazing her license plate. "You registered this in 2021? "Yes." "Your tags are about to expire. They're good through the end of the month." "Well, today's the 27th. "So, they're still valid." She could see it then, the tension building behind his composure, frustration simmering beneath his skin. He peered through the driver's side window, eyes landing on her purse. His hand reached for the door handle. "You do not have my permission to open that door," she said, her voice louder now, resolute. "You hiding something in there?" "No." "Then what's the issue?" She didn't answer, just stood there. "I could write you up for obstruction," he said. "You could try." That gave him pause. Then Jacqueline, her voice quiet and steady, said, "I'm going to call someone, not to intervene, just to document." He chuckled. "Sure, go ahead." "Who? You calling? A lawyer?" "Something like that," she said. She reached into her pocket, pulled out an old flip phone, one her son had been trying to get her to upgrade for years. She dialed without hesitation. "Chris," she said. "It's Mama. I'm pulled over. Route 58, near Timmonsville. Can you come?" The officer smirked. "What is he, some big-shot attorney?" She clicked the phone shut, said nothing more. The silence stretched longer now. The wind carried the hum of a passing truck down the road. Gravel shifted beneath their feet. The officer paced, clearly, expecting a different outcome. 10 minutes later, a black SUV appeared, its polished frame a stark contrast against the dusty shoulder. The vehicle stopped. Door opened. Out stepped Major Christopher Monroe, Army Judge Advocate General's Corps. Broad-shouldered, steady-eyed, uniform pristine, insignia shining. He didn't need to say who he was. Everything about his bearing said it for him. The trooper stood straighter, paled a little. Christopher approached without hesitation. "Good evening, sir. I'm Major Monroe, U.S. Army JAG Corps. I received a call from my mother. This is her vehicle. May I ask the basis?" "For the traffic stop," the trooper fumbled. "She was swerving. I thought it best to check." "You asked to search her vehicle?" "Yes." "Was consent given?" "No." "Then you had no legal right to touch that door handle." "I was just... You understand that?" "Yes." Jacqueline hadn't moved from where she stood. She hadn't needed to. Her son filled the space with everything she didn't say. Christopher's voice was firm. "This is why oversight matters. This is how trust breaks down." The officer opened his mouth, but Christopher cut him off. "No explanations. Reflect, because in 20 minutes, this is going on record. And if that dashcam footage goes missing, we've got her call, her phone." The trooper's face dropped. Jacqueline stood tall. Christopher turned to her. "You okay?" "I'm just tired. I'll handle the rest." Minutes later, another. Cruiser arrived. Sergeant Alan Divas. Seasoned. Measured. He spoke to Christopher and the trooper away from Jacqueline's earshot, but she didn't need to hear it. She read it in their bodies, the tension, the recalibration. When Christopher returned, he nodded. "They're running a review. Internal Affairs will see the footage. I'm writing this up too." "Thank you," she said. "I shouldn't have had to call, but I did." Sergeant Divas approached her then. "Ma'am," he said gently, "we're following up on this. I'm sorry for how things went." She nodded. "Thank you for showing up." Divas looked like he wanted to say more but didn't. The original trooper stood awkwardly by his cruiser, hands fidgeting, jaw tight. He knew something had changed. The ground beneath him had shifted. Christopher asked, "Want me to drive?" Jacqueline opened her car door. "No, I'll keep this one." She slid behind the wheel, adjusted the mirror. As she pulled back onto Route 58, the reflection in the glass didn't just hold her son's SUV, it held the echo of what nearly happened, the strength that prevented it, and the silence that told the rest. It started quietly, not with a viral video or a social media outcry, but with whispers. Someone noticed the SUV pulled over on the edge of Rosewood Street. Another caught the gleam of the officer's badge. A third person overheard the tone, sharp and dismissive, when the sergeant spoke. In Timminsville, it doesn't take long for stories to grow legs. The truth flows faster than facts, threading through church pews, passed over produce aisles, and folded into the pauses between gossip at the corner barbershop. Long before the local paper printed a single word, the town already knew something had happened to Jacqueline Monroe. Jacqueline didn't reach for a screen. No live videos, no hashtags. She stuck to her rhythm. She watered her hydrangeas, swept her porch, folded the week's laundry with care. Her cornbread still baked golden on Thursday afternoon. But that didn't stop the calls. Eula from the library was the first, soft-spoken, concerned. "You holding up okay, Jackie?" Her cousin Leon, more animated. "Bet Chris came flying. Down like a hurricane, didn't he?" Even Pastor Reeves called, voice low and deliberate, asking her to speak at the community forum that Sunday. "Just a few words," he said. She thanked him, but declined. Not because she lacked something to say, on the contrary. Jacqueline needed space, not to find the words, but to weigh them. Christopher didn't hesitate. By evening he'd filed a full complaint, timelines, call logs, all documented without emotion or embellishment. No threats, no raised voices, just facts, laid out clean and firm. 2 days later, the department placed the officer on administrative leave pending a formal review. That's when the real ripple began. Calls poured in. A teacher from Bishopville asked if Christopher could speak to her students, some of whom were too nervous to look an officer in the eye. An older woman, white, breath shaky, called Jacqueline to say she'd witnessed it all and wished she'd done something. "I froze," she said. "I'm sorry." The town wasn't just buzzing. It was shifting. People were waking up, not just to what had happened, but to how fragile dignity could be, how quickly respect could be stripped away if no one important seemed to be watching. That Saturday, Jacqueline changed her mind. The forum wasn't in a courtroom or city hall, but the multi-purpose room of St. Mark's Baptist, where the coffee sometimes burned and the microphone gave a high-pitched squeal if you breathed too close. Folding chairs lined the space, everyone filled, older folks in their Sunday best, young families with toddlers fidgeting on laps, even people Jacqueline hadn't seen in decades. She didn't read from notes, didn't clutch a speech. She walked, up, steady as ever, adjusted the mic with one hand, and spoke like she was back in her kitchen, talking across a plate of biscuits. "I'm not angry," she began. "I'm just tired of being invisible." The room stilled. "I followed every rule," she said. Polite, calm, compliant. And still he didn't see me. Not as a woman, not a mother, not a human being. Just a problem. Heads nodded. A few murmured, "Amen." "But you know what changed?" she asked. "The moment my son showed up. It wasn't his voice or his stance. It was that uniform, that title, that badge. That's what made me matter." She let the words hang there. No long-winded close. No rallying cry. Just quiet honesty. The kind that lingers. Afterward, people didn't just offer thanks. They offered recognition. Not sympathy, but solidarity. Jacqueline didn't feel proud. She felt exhausted, because she knew, deep down, how many stories like hers never got a witness, never got an ending. Just a beginning cut short. Life resumed, but not as before. She still strolled her favorite path along Prestwood Lake in the mornings, still waved at familiar faces at the IGA, still mailed birthday cards with glittery stickers to her grandkids in Beaufort. But now, eyes followed her differently. Not in pity, not quite admiration, something more complicated. Like they were seeing a version of her that had always been there, but never fully recognized. Christopher came by more often. He didn't say it aloud, but he watched her differently now, with a kind of reverence usually reserved for war stories or old heroes. One warm afternoon, they sat on her porch beneath the weight of the late-day sun. Cicadas buzzed. A pitcher of lemonade sweated on the table between them. "I keep thinking about it," he said. "What if I hadn't picked up?" Jacqueline didn't respond immediately. She stared past the yard to where a plastic pinwheel spun lazily in the breeze. "He didn't expect anyone to show," she said finally. "Especially not someone he'd have to answer to." She turned to her son. "I didn't call you to fix it, Chris. I called you to witness it, in case I didn't come home." He sat back, the breath knocked out of him. "I've seen enough stories cut short," she added. "If mine had to be told, I wanted someone who could tell it right." Christopher swallowed, nodded. "I'm proud of you, Mama." She smiled faintly. "You better be. I raised you." They sat in silence after that, a silence that held more than words ever could. A week later, a formal letter arrived from the South Carolina Department of Public Safety. A template apology. Polite, sterile, promising corrective action without explaining what that meant. Jacqueline didn't expect more, but she did receive an email from a young reporter in Columbia asking to interview her, not about the stop itself, but about her response. "If you write about me," Jacqueline said, "write about all of them. The ones who didn't get to speak." The article came out titled, "The Quiet That Changed a Town." It spread quietly, too. No explosions, no outrage, just resonance. People saw themselves in her, or saw people they had ignored. At church the following Sunday, Pastor Reeves asked her, again, to stand and speak. She declined once more, her voice calm from her seat. "Today, I'm just here to listen." And still, she didn't need a podium. Her words had already made their way through the town, stitched into conversations at gas stations and carried in whispers along grocery aisles. Christopher visited again a few days later. No press, no tension, just 2 chairs and a slow evening sun. "I keep hearing Dad in my head," he said, peeling a peach. "He used to say, 'Watch how a man treats those with no power.'" "He sure did," Jacqueline said. "Usually after. You got scolded by Miss Lena at the diner." They chuckled, the memory soft and intact. Christopher's tone changed. "I wonder how many stories like yours end differently, quietly, alone." Jacqueline nodded. "Too many. Some don't even get the chance to call." He leaned forward. "You never raised your voice. You never broke down. You just stood." "Sometimes that's all you've got," she replied. "But if you hold it steady, sometimes it's enough." She looked toward the road. That officer didn't know who I was, didn't care. But maybe now, he'll hesitate before doing it again. Maybe he'll remember my face before he forgets someone else's humanity. Christopher asked, "Do you think it changed anything?" She didn't answer right away. "Not everything," she said. "But maybe something. Maybe one." Mind, one moment. That was enough for her. The world doesn't spin off one story, but every so often it shifts, just a little, because someone stood still when it counted and didn't flinch. As the evening deepened and the porch darkened, Christopher stood to leave. He kissed her forehead gently. "I love you, Mama," she smiled. "I know. Now go. You can't live off porch wisdom alone." They both laughed. Then he was gone. Jacqueline stayed seated, the world quiet around her. No headlines, no flashbulbs. Just a woman in her chair, wrapped in the weight of her own memory, grounded like always, solid, calm, and unshaken. And in The echo of her stillness, a new kind of power settled. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that changes the air just enough to breathe differently. Because sometimes, what shifts a world isn't noise. It's a presence that refuses to disappear.